What's up? It's me, DWC, and here we are again with another MLB The Show 20 video. Today we're back in franchise going through some more players in MLB The Show 20, showing you who's the best at what. In this video we're going to be focusing on power hitters. I know that's a big thing. A lot of people love to have a lot of players who can hit for power and hit the ball out of the park. It's a very important thing to drive in runs, and it's a very valuable asset in today's MLB. So we're going to be doing the same as we did with the speed video, going over to the acquisitions page. Obviously these players also are going to be really good power hitters in Diamond Dynasty as well, so they can translate to that also. But we're going to be going to player search, and we will be going down here. Overall, none of that matters. We're going to be going attribute number 1. We will be going power versus lefties with a minimum power of 85. So we'll start off with lefties, and then we'll go to righties. So here we go. We're going to search the power versus lefties. And you see we get a lot of results back. So starting off at the bottom, we have Chris Davis from the Oakland Athletics. Last season, he only hit 23, but the 3 seasons before that, he hit 40 plus. So he is a good power hitter. He has 89 power against lefties, and that is what we're searching. You see he has 87 versus righties, so he will probably pop up for both. I have a feeling a lot of these players, if they're really good hitters, they're going to show up in both categories. But we have CJ Cron, might be a little bit of a dark horse player there for like a platoon situation in a franchise or a starter player in Diamond Dynasty with that 80 contact versus left and 85 power versus left. Then we have Hunter Renfro. He has lots of power. He has 95 power versus lefties. That is elite level power against lefties right there for Renfro of the Reyes. His contact's not the best. Contact versus left is a little better, and he still has really good power versus righties. And then we get to Gary Sanchez for the Yankees. Contact not great, but he has 90 power versus lefties. He also has 88 versus righties. So that's a good power hitting catcher if that's what you're looking for. Then you have Mitch Garver, who was arguably the best hitting catcher last season with 30 home runs, 273 average, and almost a 1,000 OPS. 29 years old for the Twins. He has 90 power versus lefties. He also has good contact versus lefties at 80 also. And then we have Glaber Torres of the Yankees, who has 88 power versus lefties. Very solid hitting stats all around for Torres right there. If you've seen my first Diamond Dynasty video, you know that I went with him purely based off of his hitting stats because they do look really good. Then we have Miguel Sano, who is 85 overall. He has 98 power versus lefties. That is really, really good. If you can tee a ball up with Miguel Sano, there's a good chance that it's going to go out of the park with that 98 power versus lefties. You see, last year, he didn't play all that much, about on average as what Miguel Sano plays in his career. You'd like to see him stay on the field a little bit more, but he did end up with 34 home runs after missing a little bit of time last season. 34 home runs with a 923 OPS. And then we have Nelson Cruz, obviously had a phenomenal year at 38 years old. One of the oldest players in MLB, but he still hits the cover off the ball. 99 power versus lefties. You literally cannot get any better than that. Still has good contact at 39 years old. The only thing about him in franchise is that he's going to start to drop off really quickly because he's 39 years old. But in Diamond Dynasty, obviously a solid hitter to have. Definitely not a good fielder, but if you're willing to take the risk and throw him in there for his bat, he's definitely going to produce for you. Then you have Edwin Encarnacion on the White Sox this year. 37 years old, 85 overall. Obviously, Encarnacion has had a lot of power for years. 86 power versus lefties. Then you have Nick Castellanos, newly acquired by the Reds in the offseason. 86 power versus lefties. His contact versus lefties is what really stands out, though, with that 99 contact versus lefties. So he is going to hit lefties really, really well. And a B potential, 28 years old, 16 million. So he's got a little bit of a big contract there. But if you want to look for a player that is a good hitter and maybe not the greatest fielder in franchise, you could easily transition him to first base, throw him at first base, and just have him be your first base slugger. Then you have rookie sensation Pete Alonso, 25 years old, 87 overall, 99 power in both categories. That is crazy for a second-year player to have 99 power in both categories. I'm assuming that he's not going to be able to hit for as much power as he did last year throughout his entire career. Yes, he will still be a good power hitter for his whole career, chances are. But there's no way he's going to keep up that pace, so I doubt we're going to see him stick at 99 in both categories for the future. But this year, starting off, 99 power versus righties and versus lefties for Pete Alonso. Then you have DD God, Joey Gallo, who also has 99 power versus lefties and versus righties. Joey Gallo's a big, strong guy, got a great throwing arm in the outfield. He's a really good fielder in general, and he has a lot of power. Contact's not great, vision's really, really bad, but if you can get a hold of one with Joey Gallo, look out, it's going far. Now we're getting into the high overall all-star level players. We have Manny Machado of the Padres now. Didn't have the greatest season last year for his standards. I expect him to bounce back with his second season in San Diego. He'll probably be more comfortable with the NL, with the stadiums, everything like that. He'll be back to the Manny that we know from Baltimore, I would assume. But 88 power versus lefties for him. His splits skew a little heavily towards hitting lefties, so you have to keep that in mind a little bit, but 88 power versus lefties obviously is going to be solid. Manny Machado is also a really, really good fielder, whether he's at third or short. I would probably keep him at third if it was up to me. Then we have Paul Goldschmidt of the Cardinals, 91 power versus lefties. I think he also had a little bit of a down year. 260 average. He still had his power, but his average was a little bit down for his standards, and his OPS was down a good bit. His second season also in St. Louis, he could have a bounce-back season as well. I didn't check Manny's stats from last year. We'll just look at that quickly. Yeah, 256 average, just under 800 OPS, 32 home runs. I'm expecting him to come back from that a little bit this year. But back to Goldschmidt, 91 power versus lefties. Great overall hitting stats for your first baseman right there. 32 years old with the Cardinals. And now we have one of my personal favorite players in baseball in Eugenio Suarez. He was underlooked for many years, but last year he totally broke out with his home run hitting, and he hit 49 home runs last season, which is absolutely unreal. It's a great season from him. As you can see, looking back at his previous few seasons, 21 home runs with 250 average. He brought it up a little bit with 26 home runs, 260, and then he had 280 with 34 home runs, and then he just completely took off last season with 50 home runs and 100 RBI and a 930 OPS. Really, really good hitter right there. His fielding is easily reliable enough to play third base, but his hitting is really, really good. 92 power versus lefties for Eugenio Suarez. 28 years old, 91 overall for the Reds. Then we have Bryce Harper of the Phillies. Last year's cover athlete. 85 power versus lefties for Bryce. He will not show up in our second category of power versus righties, which is weird for a lefty to have more power versus lefties than he does versus righties, but that's what Bryce has. And then we have Red Sox Slugger Jd Martinez. 99 contact and power for Jd Martinez versus lefties. That is as good as it gets. He hits lefties really, really well. He has for the last few years. If you want a hitter who's going to hit the ball out of the park, and if he doesn't, he's going to get you hits. Just an overall great hitter. You're obviously not having Jd Martinez in your team for fielding. So in franchise, if you get an AL team and you trade for him, stick him at your DH, he'll do great for you. Then you have Trevor Story of the Rockies, 87 power versus lefties at 27 years old. Also has really good fielding and has solid speed as well. Then we have Stanton of the Yankees, 92 overall. Obviously, Stanton's going to have a lot of power. He's jacked. He has that 99 power versus lefties that we've seen from a couple guys now, actually. And yeah, Stanton hits the ball really hard. He's a big, strong guy. If he gets under it a little bit, he's going to take one out of the park. Then we have Javy Baez, this year's cover boy. 86 power versus lefty for Baez. 87 contact versus lefty. 92 fielding, 98 arm strength. Really good fielder. Can hit the ball for home runs. The only thing he struggles with is he strikes out a bit. But in today's MLB, that's not as big of an issue as it used to be. You have Kris Bryant, who has 96 power versus lefties and 92 contact versus lefties. Really good hitter to have for your team. 28 years old. Obviously, there was a lot of talks about him moving away from the Cubs. So if you can get him on your team in franchise or pick him up in Diamond Dynasty, I'm sure he will do great for you. Then you have Aaron Judge, 95 overall. 95 power in both lefty and righty categories. And Aaron Judge has really, really good fielding stats as well. Then you have Ronald Acuna Jr., who we've seen in our fastest players video, also showing up in our best power hitters video. 88 power versus lefties, great hitting stats, great fielding, good speed, just an all-around great player right there. Going to be very, very difficult to trade for, but if you can afford him in DD, pick him up. Anthony Rendon. Now we're getting to the superstar franchise type players that you build around. 97 overall. He has 90 power versus lefties. His contact is great versus both. And obviously everyone knows Anthony Rendon is a fantastic player. Then you have Cody Bellinger, last year's NL MVP, with his 85 power versus lefties. And also has really good fielding. So yeah, we know what Cody Bellinger's about. He's a really good hitter. He has a violent swing, but it works for him, and he is definitely a player, if you can get, to get. Then you have the top two in Nolan Arenado, who has 99 power versus lefties and 99 contact versus lefties. Obviously also has great fielding. Nolan Arenado, one of the best power hitters there is. Even with the Coors effect, take that as you want. Take it against him, take it for him, whatever. Regardless of what the Coors effect has on him, he is a great hitter. And then you have the best player in MLB, Mike Trout, with his 88 power versus lefties. I don't think I need to spend much time on Trout. He's the best that there is. So now we're going to move over to power versus righties. We'll see any repeat players, and we'll see who is better hitting versus righties that didn't show up for versus lefties. We're going to go down to the bottom. And we start off with a lower overall player this time, with a 67 rated Daniel Palka. So obviously not a high rated card. His overall isn't very good. But if you want to bring in a player in a franchise, like a cheap player to have on your bench who can come in a pinch hit situation and hit against righties, you can pick him up. 89 power versus righties. He can get the job done for you off the bench. Then you have Daniel Vogelbach, really good hitter. Power-wise, at least. 85 power versus righties. What did he do last year? He had 30 home runs last year, so he did pretty well power-wise. I think he was really hot at one point, but he must have leveled out. Then you have Fran Reyes, who's a really good hitter for the Indians this year. 94 power versus righties. His contact versus righties is a little down. Contact versus lefties is a little better, but he's just a solid hitter for your team. Probably wouldn't be too difficult to pick up with that B potential at 24 years old. I know he just... So, yeah, he's definitely a player that you could target in your franchise. Eric Thames of the Nationals has 85 power versus righties. Thames had his really hot start when he came back to the MLB, but since then he's been pretty average of a player. Then you have Chris Davis again for versus righties. I don't need to spend time on him because we've seen him in the last section. I talked about him. 87 power versus righties. Then we have Jorge Soler, who went crazy last year. 94 power versus righties. Also has good power versus lefties, but he didn't show up because we had our base set at 85. But last year, this man hit 48 home runs. Don't know if he's going to be able to repeat that, but yeah, he has a lot of power, so you could look to pick him up if you need maybe a DH in franchise because his fielding's not that great. Stick him at DH, and he'll do wonders for you. He'll do wonders for your team. You could also transition him to first base in franchise. I know it's not one of his listed positions, but you can change his position if you really want to. Then you have Eloy Jimenez, who has 88 power versus righties, young player for the White Sox there, 82 overall at 23. Jock Peterson, 90 power versus righties. The rest of his stats are not that great, but he can hit the ball hard against righties. Michael Conforto, 85 power versus righties. Gary Sanchez again, 88 power versus righties. We already seen him. Kyle Schwarber with the 92 power versus righties. Schwarber's obviously one of the better power hitters out there. He hit 38 home runs last year. He's kind of an all-or-nothing guy. Obviously, he did have a lot of doubles also last year, but like if he's not hitting for extra bases, there's a chance he's not going to be that helpful for your team. Mitch Garver, we see again, one of the best hitting catchers around, 88 power versus righties. Glaber Torres is back again with 85 power versus righties. Mike Moustakas with 85 power versus righties. Very solid hitting stats for Moustakas joining the Cincinnati Reds this year. Miguel Sano is back again with 93 power versus righties. Nelson Cruz again with 91 power versus righties. I'm just blown away with how well Nelson Cruz hit last year at his age. Similar to David Ortiz's last season, I guess. He's just DHing and he's just hitting the ball. That's all he has to do, and he does it really well. Yordan Alvarez, very young player for the Astros. We're not going to get into the whole Astros thing in this video, but those hitting stats are crazy for Alvarez. Going to be a tough player to trade for in franchise, being a potential 22 years old and already at a high overall, but his power is really good. Then you have Correa, 85 power versus righties, and Encarnacion again with 89 power versus righties. Josh Bell, who had a solid breakout year last year with 85 power versus righties. Matt Olson, 94 power versus righties. One of the better fielding first basemen there is. Pete Alonso again. Obviously, he had 299s in his power, so he's definitely going to show up for this one as well. Joey Gallo also had 299s. Max Muncy, 88 power versus righties. Josh Donaldson, 86 power versus righties. Christian Yelich, 99 power versus righties and 99 contact versus righties. So Yelich is obviously one of the best players in baseball. I would argue that he's the second best player in baseball at this point in his career. 99 power versus righties with that 99 contact. Also has good hitting stats versus lefties. Great hitter. Tough to acquire, but obviously one of the best hitters in baseball. Then we have Eugenio Suarez again with his 90 power. Juan Soto, one of the best young players, 21 years old. Kind of proved himself as a superstar in the postseason, winning the World Series with the Nationals. He has 90 power versus righties, and this guy is a hitting machine. Jd Martinez again with 88 power versus righties. Stanton again with his 88 power versus righties. Aaron Judge again with his 95 power versus righties. Cody Bellinger again with his slightly higher 88 power versus righties and his better contact. And then obviously Mike Trout on top of the list at his 99 overall rating. 99 power versus righties. Again, don't need to spend much time on Trout because he's Trout. But that's that. Those are your best power hitting players in MLB The Show 20. I'm just going to quickly bring up the top players for each position. We'll bump it up to 90, and we'll see who comes up. So obviously your best power hitters, the top of the top, are Mike Trout, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Eugenio Suarez, Yelich, Gallo, Alonso, Nelson Cruz, Miguel Sano, and those are your best power hitters this year. You can also throw in Jorge Soler. But those are the best power hitting players in MLB The Show 20. And that has been this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Like if you have. Subscribe for more MLB The Show 20 content coming. And I'll see you in the next one.